I wanted to share some of the benefits that I have derived from working with an obstacle that I've had for a while, and that is being able to visualize the Buddha. And this came to light as a result of our retreat on the Shakyamuni Buddha practice. For a long time, and this has been years, I've been working on overcoming that obstacle. Because every time I tried to do that, there was a lot of fear, anxiety, there was just an incredible amount of nervousness, hesitation, and to just be able to do that. To the point where I just couldn't. I had to skip through it, and So I decided to work with it, and I work with it different ways, slowly, over time. The first thing that I did was just get used to the idea of seeing some light in front of me, and that was good enough for a while. Then I decided to invest that light with a little bit more of more characteristics, and just know, okay, it's not just the light, but there's actually a being there, and had to get used to that idea. Then I eventually graduated to the body. So then the body was fine, but I couldn't focus on the face. There was just this huge fear, particularly the eyes. I worked with the body for a while. Then I filled in very hesitantly the face. And I felt the shock to my system, but I gradually got used to it. And now I'm to the point where I am visualizing the face and trying to actually feel the compassion, the acceptance, the love coming from the Buddha. And I'm trying to anchor that in my body, in my mind, so that I feel it real. It's not just a concept, but I can actually just feel it everywhere. And even though it's taking years and it seems like an isolated, simple thing to do, the ramifications and the benefits of that go very deeply, or at least in my experience, I have observed that those benefits have gone deeply. The most immediate benefit was to strengthen my outer refuge. I mean, how can you take a refuge in a being where you can't even look at him, where you are so afraid that just the mere thought of that being present sends chills to the whole body, where you imagine all kinds of pain and hurt and things just deriving from that visualization? Not possible. So I had to walk myself to overcoming that fear and generating some level of trust. In the image, yes, but more deeply into that source of refuge. Because how can you respect, admire, and rely on a person or a being that you are so deeply afraid of? It's just not possible. So just the idea of refuge was at that moment not a very valid idea. I just couldn't do it. So gradually, through overcoming this barrier of fear, trust increased. Then I could work on generating respect, even though it was very tenuous at that moment. With study, with meditation, that grew. And mind you, some of these steps were not necessarily so deliberate, but were much more organic, were much more sort of by the seat of my pants. How do I get this anxiety to go away? Then it occurred that because this experience with the Buddha, I realized was tied into how I relate to myself. You see, how I look at myself and the self-criticism, the self-judgment, the harshness, the anger directed inwards was being projected on this being. And so then how could I develop then an inner refuge was the question if I was relating to myself even unconsciously in that way. So again, a big obstacle, not possible. So then I had to work on at the same time is how do I see myself? How do I handle my mistakes? How do I, to what level of support, understanding, and gentleness can I take my practice towards myself so that it's reflected then and projected into not just the Buddha in front of me, but also other people that I relate to, that I work with. And then it brought me to another piece, which is closely tied to that, and that is the piece of self-examination. I mean, in the 37 verses of the Bodhisattvas, somebody help me, 37 verses of the Bodhisattva, thank you. 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, there's a verse that says, if you don't examine yourself, you are not a practitioner. So if I have the fear of how I'm going to react, and there's a lot of self-judgment, criticism, and anger related to that self-examination, well, that does not support the practice of self-examination. On the contrary, that generates a lot of aversion to a practice that is seminal to what we want to do and how we want to grow. So then that spurred some interest and some energy towards looking at myself and my mistakes in a more gentle way. So already, just what seemed to be a one single isolated practice of trying to visualize the Buddha is now having all of these very deep linkages to other aspects of the practice. So then I began to see the interconnectedness of what we do and how we do it. But then it brings also bodhicitta into it. And how does bodhicitta get connected to this practice of visualizing the Buddha? Because of the fact that if I'm criticizing myself in this way and relating to myself in this way, then I'm also doing the same to other people, and that was entirely the case. Criticizing others harshly and then generating aversion towards them. So how can the bodhicitta grow to encompass all sentient beings when I'm generating aversion based on this criticism and harshness in judgment? So then that brought the question, how then can I soften and accept and be gentle with others as they also are trying to do their best, so that I can reinforce bodhicitta, so that I don't go into a place where I generate this deep aversion. For this particular piece of the puzzle, the practice of feeling that love and compassion and gentleness coming from the Buddha was an example of things that I wanted to also give to others. So this practice of visualizing the Buddha and connecting and feeling also then gave me an idea of what I wanted to project and how I wanted to relate with others. Lastly, to bring in the wisdom piece into this process, is that in observing how I criticize others, in observing the mechanism and the steps of how that happened, what I discovered was that when I criticize others, really underneath what's happening is I'm building up my own ego. Why? Because if that person is doing wrong, I'm the one who's doing it right? If that person is making a mistake and I can spot that mistake, well, that means that I'm good. That means I'm okay. I know the right way. I know what to do. I know what to say. So every time I criticize others, there was this underlying ego-feeding mechanism. And that's the reason why getting over that bad habit of criticizing others was so difficult for me. And it's because, well, it still is, it's because there's that hook of if that person is bad, it means I'm good. If I know what they're doing wrong, it means I know the right way. If they're bad, I'm better. So in reifying that ego, right, and solidifying the other person's mistakes, foibles, errors, what have you, I'm actually working against what I'm trying to develop, which is the wisdom of no self, the wisdom of emptiness, of inherent existence. And I'm creating a barrier to that which I'm trying to accomplish and understand. So again, all of these sort of tied in to just that thing of not being able to visualize the Buddha. But it went so deep in so many different directions that I couldn't just leave it at one isolated thing, but actually I had to see the greater scope of what was in that one seemingly small, although it took a long time. It's taking a long time, actually. Yeah, so anyway, that's what I